always go on about this every time I do pop up on these videos, but we are this close to every single wrestling promotion finally having fans back in the buildings, and it is turning me into an excited Eric. And before all of this, I was a sad Simon, so that change is very welcome, hence why I just want to make that the focus of my life. But welcome to WhatCulture Wrestling, and the world keeps on turning, which means the pro wrestling keeps on coming at our face, and today we have recently watched the latest episode of Impact, but was it any good or did it absolutely suck? I don't know. He knows. The finger of power. Let's up those doubts. The start of Impact really made me laugh because, man, W. Morrissey is really taking this idea of I hate people being friends in this company and he running with it. Because for the past few weeks, he thinks that if you do have a buddy, you're a massive idiot. So when he found out it was going to be Kojima versus Eddie Edwards, and those two are really good pals, he found Eddie Edwards in the back and he just beat him up. He popped up on the big screen to tell us this, which is how Eddie Edwards is going to be written out of the storylines because he got injured recently, and I suppose when he does come back, we're going to do W. Morrissey versus Eddie Edwards. Should be pretty good. Sabin and Brian Myers then came out because they didn't like the fact that Kojima was already in the ring, and although they tried to beat him up, all of a sudden Jake something was here, and because it is pro wrestling, magic powers went wahoo wahey, and we had a tag team match. Now, it didn't take a betting human to figure out how this match was going to go, but it was still fun enough, and Sam Beal and Brian Myers are actually a decent team because they would tag it out. They made sure that Jake something could get nowhere near his corner because they realized, oh man, if he does go over there, Kojima's gonna get a hot tag, and I've seen wrestling, he's gonna be running wild. Unfortunately, they weren't able to achieve this though, because Kojima was just getting hotter and hotter, so when his hand did touch Jake's hands, he did indeed explode, and he started to kick everybody's ass. He was just chopping his way to victory too when Brian Myers tried to stop him, but Jake something was like, no, this is not happening on my watch, so he gave Brian the black hole slam, and then poor Sam Beal, being the rookie of the match, he just got absolutely ruined with a cutter and a lariat. 1, 2, 3, the good guys win. I think this may have been Kojima's last Impact show as well, so thank you very much for coming. I had a rollicking good time seeing you over here, but also when it all was said and done, he didn't really seem to care about Eddie Edwards anymore. So maybe he's finally learned about the W. Morrissey message and that buddies and pals don't matter. Chat with Scott D'Amore next, and he didn't seem very happy that Tommy Dreamer is now the overseer of Impact Wrestling. But before we could go any further with that, out came Rosemary and Havoc. They wanted a tag team title match because it is wrestling, and when you do want one of these things, you just walk up to the person in charge and say, hey ho, this is what I want. And he said he would take it under advisement as long as they quit with the hocus pocus. Now, I don't know if this was a jab at WWE, but it tickled me. We then had an utter roller coaster next, because it was Tenille Dashwood versus Rachel Ellering, and when you think about it, this was a pretty big deal. Impact's been building it for weeks. The thing was, however, this was more pitched about Tenille screwing herself over, as opposed to Ellering being a dominant badass, and given everything going on with Rachel Ellering and Jordynne Grace, well, I kind of felt like it should have pitched Rachel Ellering as a badass. But Dashwood only got distracted when Caleb with a K wanted to take some selfies, and as we all know, that's like her kryptonite. She can't help it, which meant she walked into the most devastating move at all, a surprise entertainment, the surprise roll-up that came out all of wrong. And yeah, she lost because she's a goof. What I will say, however, is that the aftermath to all of this was great, because Caleb with a K and Tenille were so mad, they just started laying shots into Rachel Ellering when out came Jazz to try and make the save. She utterly failed, so we needed someone else. Of course, we were all hoping that it was going to be Jordynne Grace, and it was, and not only did she clear the ring, but when Rachel put her hand out to give it a shake, Grace was like, no, I don't want that, and she gave her a hug. It was beautiful. And if this does go the way that I think it's going to go, it's going to have even more impact when Jordynne goes, man, I was just pretending, and socks her right in the face. So I think we're doing very well with all of this, and I'm giving it an up. Gia Miller was then interviewing Chris Bay, and he made it very clear with his big X Division match just a few weeks away, he is still staying neutral, so he's like Switzerland. Rohit Raju and his crew then arrived, and it was kind of teased they were once again going to try and recruit Chris Bay, but they didn't, and instead they went, no, you moron, we're happy with you being in the middle, just don't step on our turf. So that was always going to piss Chris Bay off, he wasn't going to take that lying down, but I can kind of smell it now. We are slowly planting the seeds to turn Bay good guy, and it's probably the time to do it. It was then our tag team match that we had set up last week when it was Fowler Bar and TJP taking on Rich Swann and Willie Mack. Man, I was half expecting W. Morrissey just to come out here and say, there's too much friends. But we didn't see him. It was a really good match as well because there was a bunch of high flying. We were like, man, how do they do it? Although we didn't really get much of that because before you could say boo to a goose, which is weird, don't do it, out came Violent by Design and they just destroyed everybody. I mean, they killed them all like Metallica in the 80s as Rhino, Cody Deaner and Joe Doring ensured that nobody was going to be the #1 contenders for their tag team titles, which is how this had been pitched. Whoever was winning was going to go after that. So you've got to assume now that the end game will be some sort of triple threat at Slammiversary, and Impact has done that a lot. But here's the caveat. I just enjoy Violent by Design so much. They're a really good group that has evolved throughout the weeks that even when they do stuff like this, I'm actually all good with it because I kind of go, well, yeah, that does make sense. And as long as things make sense, you can do whatever the hell you want. So up. A kind of a week up, but up all the same. Impact then went Impact, because Fire and Flavor had heard about all this stuff with Rosemary and Havoc, so they went to Scott D'Amore and they're like, Scotty, baby, you cannot do this. These two freaks don't deserve a shot at our tag team titles, and they should be moved to the bottom and work their way up. And look, they may be heels, but they are 100% correct. I got a little bit confused here because I thought that Scott said what he was going to do was put these two against Rosemary and Havoc, and then if they were able to beat them, they would go on to become the #1 contenders. But then later on, we got told it was going to be Rosemary and Havoc taking on Susan and Kimberly to decide who's going to become the #1 contenders. So all of this was a little bit confusing, but I guess it was fine. We then cut to Tommy Dreamer after this, of course, who has his team to take on Team Callis later. But whereas the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega are thick as thieves, you have Chris Sabin, Sami Callihan and Moose, and they pretty much all hate each other. Sabin, however, told us that because he loves Tommy Dreamer and he loves Impact, he'll do it for them. Moose was like, look, I hate all of you, and if you get in my way, I will destroy you. And Callihan kind of feels the same, but because his hate for Kenny Omega is even more, he's happy to do whatever he has to do. Although, small spoiler, all of this was lip service, and it was all gonna go very bad. We then got Petey Williams versus Chris Bay. I mean, why not? Up. Because look, let's face it, these guys are just such good professional wrestlers, and they were doing some grappling and they were doing some high flying stuff when Chris was like, actually, I think I'll work over your leg, Petey, because then I'm going to have the upper hand. And he did. Because if you can't walk, you can't wrestle. But really, Williams just needed a plan B. Because his plan A was, I'm going to hit you with a Canadian Destroyer that he's been doing for the last 15 years. And when plan A failed, he just thought, well, I'm going to try it again. Sometimes you just need something else in the tank. Because when he tried it once, he got hit by a TKO, and when he hit it twice, he ended up in the sharpshooter. And you think he would have learned for a third time, but no, he went for a trio of these, never hit it once, so Chris Bay was like, man, this is like taking candy from a baby. So he hit the art of finesse, and he beat Petey Williams 1, 2, 3. I do hope that Williams learns a lot from this, but let's face it was a really good wrestling match. And afterwards, out came Ace Austin, Madman Fulton, Rohit Raju, and their entire group, and they started to beat everybody up because that's what they do now. Chris Bell's like, man, I told you I'm Switzerland, I'm leaving. So all the good guys in that X Division match, they ran out instead. And because, of course, Chris Bay had been insulted earlier, eventually he did get back in the ring, he helped the baby faces, so now he's the hero of the day. So you got to assume that we're going to be doing a big tag team match before we do get to our Ultimate X match at Slammiversary. And look, this all sounds simple, but simple works in wrestling, so just keep on doing it. We also had a quick skit with Kimberly and Susan where they were like, man, we suck now, we've hit rock bottom, so what the hell are we gonna do? And Kimber actually had a very smart plan. She was like, why don't you become Su Yung? Because Su Yung can probably beat Deonna Purrazzo for the Knockouts title. And Sue just went, I don't know who Su Yung is. So of course it does mean soon, Su Yung will be back. We then had Jake something too, and my word, this guy is just obsessed with names. Because do not forget, he at first was Cousin Jake, then he became Jake something, and here he was saying, next week on Impact Wrestling, I want to take on Brian Myers because he's a massive dick, and if I do beat him, he's gonna have to call me Jake Professional. So is that gonna make him Jake Cousin something professional? Because I tell you this, that is going to be very confusing on your passport or driver's license. Steve Macklin was then back on Impact. He walked to the ring looking really mad, and he beat the absolute chutzpah out of some enhancement talent. His name was Manny Smith, but honestly, I don't think Manny got in anything here. I mean, at one point, he was in the Tree of Woe position, and Steve Macklin was just punching him, and then he went to the other corner and just launched himself into this poor fool. I thought he was dead. There's not much else to say about it at the moment, because what we are doing is letting you know, oh, it doesn't matter what you thought of this guy in WWE, we are going to present him massively differently. So I have to sit down, and I have to be patient, and I will feed back to you when I have more news. Which brought us to our main event, which was quite massive given that it was just on free TV, because it was Sami Callihan, Moose and Chris Sabin taking on Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers. This is getting it up. If you were really quiet during the start of this too, you could hear the internet melting down as well. Because not only did Carl Anderson come out here wearing the AEW world title, I think Don Callis had the AAA world title. So everyone was like, oh, this is so disrespectful to the championships. They're heels, they're bad guys. That's the entire point. They don't have any respect. Obviously too, this was Team Callis versus Team Dreamer, but the problem with Team Dreamer is that yes, he had 3 people that thought the other one was scum, so they were never going to be able to get on. I mean, Chris Sabin and Moose are going at it at Slammiversary, and because they were like kids here at the start, Sami Callihan was look like, I will turn this car around, but for now, I'll just begin the match. It then got really bad because these two were just tagging each other in the hard way. I mean, they were slapping the shit out of each other. So Carl Anderson realized this, and he started to beat up Chris Sabin, who essentially didn't have any friends. There was also this amazing move when Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers got on each other's shoulders and basically fell into Chris Sabin. And even when he was able to make the tag, Moose was like, nope, I'm not gonna do it. I couldn't give a crap. So he tagged in Sami instead. It actually seemed like Callihan was gonna win because he was able to hit the pile driver, but then that damn Kenny Omega distracted the referee. So Carl Anderson booted Sam right in his balls. Chris Sabin was then back in for a little bit, but then Moose was like, actually, no, I want to be the guy, so he tagged in. But the way he got Chris Sabin back in to be the legal man was to essentially grab him by the throat, chuck him over the top rope, and because wrestling is a very strange sport, this counted as a legal tag. Moose then decided to leave because he was so infuriated, but Tommy Dreamer was like, look man, just calm down and get back in there. When Don Callis snuck behind Tommy Dreamer, he pushed him into Moose, and you already know how that was gonna end. Moose turned around and he beat up Tommy Dreamer. This led Chris Sabin to then get really pissed off because nobody touches Tommy Dreamer, so he dived at Moose, but that meant he didn't have his focus on his opponents. He got like dragon suplexed, then he got hit by the Magic Killer, and he got pinned. This did not go well at all. Kenny and Co celebrated like this was the biggest wins of their entire life, and I thought all of this was very entertaining. But yes, we are getting a lot of these elite distractions recently, but as I always say, they are kind of working right now. They get you super duper mad at these 3. So we'll just wait and see how many we do. The best part about all of this, and it had people online going, what happened to Kenny's beard, is that he didn't have his stupid facial hair because of course, Impact tapes in bulk. So when he filmed this, he didn't have a beard, but now he does have a beard, which means continuity is just out the window. Although not really. Even if he does turn up on AEW next week with the beard, and my word, I hope that he does, he can just say, well, I grew it on a Wednesday, I shaved it off for a Friday, and because, you know, it will grow back, it returned for the Wednesday. And again, never shave this stuff off. I think it's brilliant. Which brought us to the end of Impact, and as you can see, it's all up, and there are no downs. That doesn't mean it was the perfect show, it was the greatest thing ever, but it just did what it had to do. And I got to the end of my 90-minute, 2-hour watching period, and I was like, yeah, cool, thanks very much. I'm excited about Slammiversary. Sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles, and obviously overall, it's getting it down. Of course it's not, it's getting it up. Now don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you think about Impact Wrestling. Are you like me and you just find it so damn easy to view? Also like the video, share the video and subscribe. Go over to WhatCulture.com, check that out, come say hello on social media, and you're already on YouTube. As I always say, click another video. You don't even have to watch it, just do it to appease YouTube. My name is Simon WhatCulture. I will be back throughout the weekend with more ups and downs because wrestling never stops. So I will see you then.